Oh, welcome to this fifth video of our course on going for refuge, looking at the idea of going for refuge and looking at its opposite, going forth, looking at the pair. We go forth from something so as to go for refuge to something else. And it's a gradual process of change, a gradual process of reorientating our being. We've been looking at deepening our going for refuge. It implies deepening our going forth. And it throws up the question, how do we go forth? And what do we go forth from? We go forth from false refuges, things that don't really give us what we most deeply seek. But how do we do it? How do we do it more and more deeply? And how do we go for refuge more and more deeply? To true refuges, to that which really does satisfy our deepest desires. Well, the how is the theme of our video today. The practical how. And the question for you immediately, I suggest you can stop the video and have a chance to think, and even better, write your answer in chat. How do you think we'll do it? What do you think I'll say? How to more deeply go forth, more deeply go for refuge. You can compare your answer with mine at the end. So, looking more closely at false refuges and true refuges, we'll be doing this using a Buddhist teaching called the worldly winds. The worldly winds. The teaching of the worldly winds is found in the Pali Canon. Of course, the oldest collection of Buddhist teachings. Which means the teaching of the worldly winds was very probably taught by the historical Buddha himself. So the worldly winds, wind is an interesting image. Let's start with just staying a moment with the image of the wind, bringing to mind the qualities of the wind. Wind is often a gentle breeze, but it can also be a deadly storm. Wind is always blowing, but it's not obvious why it's blowing. There's no discernible pattern. We can't predict the direction it's blowing from. It's not visible. And if you're a leaf falling from a tree, the wind can control your destiny. If you're a great mountain, it will have little effect. So we're looking at winds. But what kind of winds? Well, worldly winds, the winds of the world, meaning the opinions of the world, or more precisely, the opinions of people in the world, people without an elevated level of awareness, people with everyday perspectives and values, everyday beliefs, people living in conditioned existence, in samsara, the worldly winds is our life in samsara. That's what we'll be examining in a little more detail as we go on in this video. So what are these worldly winds? First, we can say that there are 8 of them, 8 worldly winds, 4 pairs, 4 pairs of opposites, each pair having a positive and a negative component. But here, by positive, we just mean positive is what people usually want, what people find attractive, and negative is what people don't want, what people don't find attractive. So let's have a look at them. Looking at the positive qualities first. So the first worldly wind is gain, meaning money, and all we can get with money. So it means material gain, clothes, cars, apartments, phones, holidays, you name it. Gain can also mean winning, like sportsmen who compete, aim to defeat others, gain in any form of competition. The second worldly wind is fame, writing a bestseller, being a pop star, or just being popular, getting loads of likes on social media, being attractive, being sexually attractive, being loved, or just being respected as a cool dude or a strong character. So that's fame. Thirdly, there's praise. Praise from parents, teachers, your boss, from friends, fans and lovers, and family, having a good reputation, winning awards and medals, being a 5-star student, getting promoted, getting a really high salary. So different forms of praise. And lastly, pleasure. a luxury lifestyle, fine food and clothes, exotic holidays, ecstatic sex, ecstatic drugs, maybe, all the different forms of pleasure. So these are the four positive components of the worldly winds, at least positive in a sense of what people want. Gain, pain, praise, and pleasure. Question for you to answer in chat. Which of these worldly winds blows strongest for you? Meaning which of these four qualities do you find the most attractive? Looking forward to hearing your reply. Oh, the teaching on the worldly winds doesn't say that these things are bad as such. Material gain in itself isn't bad. Fame itself isn't bad. The Buddha is very famous. Pleasure isn't bad. Praise isn't bad. But the thing is, whether these positive qualities, there are also negative ones. They're opposites. And Buddhism tells us we can't avoid experiencing them. And the negative ones are a source of suffering. So the positive qualities don't really give us security. We have to spend quite a lot of time and energy on trying to get them and keep them. But let's look at their negative counterparts. First of all, where there's gain, there's loss. Whilst it's uncommon to lose whole fortunes these days with our insurance companies, some companies do go bust. Revolutions and wars are still possible. And of course, we take nothing with us at death. But our income usually depends on our job, which we can lose. If we have a highly paid job, we might feel we can't leave it, even if we want to, because we don't want to get used to it. Diminution in lifestyle. Our financial security might depend on our spouse and family, and these relations might change. And even if we do maintain the status quo, and everything stays stable, we're still dependent on other people, not really free maybe to go against their wishes. And even just being aware that we can't go against certain people's wishes can have a negative effect, a dulling effect. So some of the causes of loss to go with gain, to go with a pair, in a pair with gain. And fame, our second worldly wind, can turn to infamy. Infamy, being famous for the wrong reasons, justly or unjustly. experiencing slander, a bad reputation, which, because we're famous, we can't escape from. Or maybe just our fame runs out. Most pop stars are quickly forgotten. Their music stops selling. Their money might run out too. Or maybe just a lack of fame, obscurity. Despite our very best efforts, nobody seems very interested in us or what we're doing. So the second negative component of the worldly winds, infamy or obscurity. And thirdly, where there's praise, there's also blame. People find fault, they blame. The Buddha once commented that there's not a single person in the world who's only praised and never blamed. Not even a Buddha is only praised and never blamed. He who has reached perfection, and not to speak of ordinary people with all our faults. So where there's praise, there's also blame. And fourthly, finally, where there's pleasure, there's pain. Pain because nobody lives forever. And with old age and death, there comes physical pain. With sickness, there comes physical pain. Old age and sickness being the first two sights that the Buddha to be, saw as a young man. But it's not only towards the end of our life. Our bodies can let us down at any moment. We can get injured. We can fall ill. We frequently do. We might be involved in an accident. And a sportsman, for example, could have his career ended at any moment by injury. Pain is inherent in the human body. We might suddenly have to face chronic pain, pain that will last for years or decades, for the whole of our lives. So where we experience pleasure, there we can also experience pain. So our 8 worldly winds, gain and loss, fame and infamy, praise and blame, and pleasure and pain. 4 qualities which we chase after, which we can spend most of our time and energy chasing after. And 4 qualities that we try to avoid, even desperately avoid, that we will experience sooner or later. Question for you, for chat. Which of the negative worldly winds blows strongest for you? Which are you most scared of? And what's the way out? What can we do about our human predicament? Looking forward to hearing, to reading your answers in chat. So, what can we do with all of this? To begin with, some observations. Even though we all want gain, fame, praise, and pleasure, even though we all want to avoid loss, infamy, blame, and pain, Buddhism tells us we'll never manage it. And even if we did, we wouldn't be happy. It's like an actor trying to become famous. And what does he do? What does she do if they manage it? They start wearing dark glasses so nobody will recognize them. Something inherently contradictory. And even if we did get everything we wanted, Buddhism tells us that something in our depths would not be satisfied. Something that could only be satisfied by the transcendental. And a question for you to write your answers in chat. The transcendental. It's easy to say the word, but what does it really mean for you? And going on and trying to get what we want and avoiding what we don't want can be the cause of stress and unsatisfaction. Can take up a lot of time and energy, become the motivating factor of our whole lives. But what's more, Buddhism again tells us that we react with craving or hatred, craving to get what we craving in order to get what we want, hatred when we don't get what we want. And sometimes it's been remarked that we want to get something and then we get it and then we're stuck with it for a very long time. So it isn't a great life hack, is it? And what can we do? A question for you to think about right now, and then you can hear a response. So we'll go through each pair of worldly winds, one by one, and looking for a resolution to the problem, a resolution to the polarity between them, polarity between extremes, looking for a way out. We'll be looking at the worldly winds in the light of the teaching on the middle way. But what is the teaching of the middle way? The middle way was first taught by the Buddha when he set in motion the wheel of the Dharma, the Dhammacakka Pavatana. So we're really going back to right to the beginning, the first teaching of the Dharma by the Buddha. recounted in a sutta of the same name, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. The middle way was one of the small collections of teachings that we're told he gave at that time. The middle way being, in this case, the middle way between comfort, the comfort of ordinary life, and asceticism. The teaching of the middle way was popularized and used also by Nagarjuna, a Mahayana Buddhist philosopher monk who lived about 700 years after the Buddha. He used the middle way, in Sanskrit, Madhyama Pradipat. Oh, sorry, Madhyama Pratipad. Madhyama Pratipad. To demonstrate the futility of metaphysical speculations. We can conclude that the middle way, the teaching of the middle way, is a principle that we can apply to different situations, to many different situations, concrete and practical situations. So let's see how to apply it here. In general, we can say the middle way is the middle way between extremes, something between them, something between these extremes, but on a higher level. Being on a higher level, it resolves the polarity between the extremes. And it actually includes both extremes. The resolution to the polarity is different every time. And it's called the Dharma door, meaning the door to the Dharma, that which gives access to the Dharma. So we can ask the question, what's the Dharma door between loss and gain? Before I look at that specific question, just a couple of general points. When we talk about the middle way, we're not talking about compromise. What is compromise? You say, 2 and 2 is 4. I say, 2 and 2 is 6. We agree. Let's compromise. So 2 and 2 is 5. It's not correct, of course. Compromise doesn't lead to truth. We can also say that the middle way is not an intellectual resolution to the polarity. It's a resolution that leads to understanding on a higher level of being and consciousness. And from that perspective, from that higher level, the polarity itself no longer exists. So it's a bit mysterious. And the teaching of the middle way, in a way, uses the same mechanism for resolution of problems that in Zen Buddhism, koans are used. A question for you. Do you have any favorite koans? Have you had any koans in life that you've resolved? Please let us all know. So what is the middle way between each pair of opposites? With gain and loss, the middle way, I suggest, is simplicity. Simplicity of lifestyle, meaning materially only having what is necessary, not having unnecessary things. What are unnecessary things? Using money for pleasure, holidays in the sun, holidays, money to be attractive to people, money to get interest when you enjoy buying things, money for identity. I'm such and such a person. I'm a Harley Davidson rider. Money for power, money for sex, money for security. Some say that money is the road to freedom. You can buy yourself out of trouble. And I agree, it's partially true. But since you're always dependent on keeping your money and earning money, well, you sacrifice your freedom in another way that way. So is it possible to be happy without much money? Living a simple lifestyle? A question for you for chat. Can you be happy with a little money? How much money do you need for happiness? If we are living a simple life, we've got more chance to develop our awareness, more possibilities to study and practice the Dharma, to meditate, have contact with spiritual friends, to go on retreats, more chance to reflect more deeply on our experience. We get more opportunities to get pleasure from simple things. Watching a beautiful sunset, feeling the warmth of the sun on our face. The busier we are, the more money we need, the more money we have to spend simply to do things quickly because we're so busy. The more money we spend to recover from the stresses of earning money. It's a vicious circle. So the middle way in this regard between gain and loss is a simplicity of lifestyle. And if we think of gain and loss as winning and losing in sport, as victory and defeat, sometimes a great sports final and game of football can be effectively decided in a single moment of play. An inch on either side and the ball comes back into play or goes into the goal. It's almost a matter of luck. And the great difference between victory and defeat. In this regard, maybe the middle way would be valuing true skill and talent, recognizing your own true skill and talent, rather than relying on external manifestations, awards and medals. So valuing your true talent is a middle way between gain and loss here. So let's go on to the second pair of worldly winds. Fame and either infamy or obscurity. And what is the middle way here? To begin with, let's ask the question, why desire fame? Even what is fame? You could say, in essence, fame is extreme popularity. You're popular with a very large number of people. And who are popular? Who are so very popular? The attractive and the beautiful. And infamy. Here you're famous, but with a bad reputation, a bad name. And obscurity. You're simply not famous. So what is the middle way between fame and either infamy or obscurity? I would say the middle way is inner beauty, spiritual beauty. We develop inner beauty, spiritual beauty through mindfulness, through increasing our level of mindfulness, living with mindfulness, radiating mindfulness. The practice of mindfulness leads to an inner harmony, which is in itself beautiful. And it radiates outwards. The Buddha taught that mindfulness should be developed in the same way that we play a musical instrument, with the same awareness and sensitivity, the same harmonious energy. So that's our image for the development of mindfulness. Beautiful music. Sangharakshas are taught the value of art for the spiritual life. Art as a means of communication. Communication being so very important. in a spiritual life, for spiritual development, communication of teacher with student and student with teacher, communication of friend with friend. Sangharakshita himself was a prolific poet and deeply interested and deeply immersed in the arts and culture, both Western and Eastern. He taught that every true artist is on the spiritual path, although not everyone on a spiritual path needs to be an artist. Art has been so very important in the history of Buddhism. We have beautiful Tibetan tankas and mysterious, simple Zen art. Even the statues of the Buddha seated in meditation is an expression of art. All are means of communication, means of communication of spiritual ideals. Question for you: what's your favorite art form? What are your sources of beauty? What beauty inspires you? So inner beauty, spiritual beauty, is the middle way between fame and infamy or obscurity. Spiritual beauty satisfies our need, the deeper need from which our desire for fame and popularity spring. So what is the middle way between praise and blame? Praise, feeling confident, feeling good. When somebody says something good about us, or we win a game, or we do something well, or feeling bad, feeling terrible, lacking confidence. When someone says something bad about us, we lose, or we fail to do something or do it badly. Finding the middle way means stopping feeling dependent on praise and blame, means stopping feeling dependent on the opinions of others, stopping depending on their thoughts, stop feeling judged by the feelings and thoughts of others. So what is the middle way between praise and blame? In a word, we could say it's reality, truth, if you like. Seeing things as they really are, seeing ourselves as we really are, seeing ourselves objectively, but seeing ourselves subjectively as well. Knowing who we really are means knowing the qualities we have or don't have, and not just opinions. Opinions that are all so often from people who don't have a deep awareness of us. Opinions founded on their emotional reactions most often. the more we are aware of how these opinions are not founded in any real awareness of us, the less important these opinions become to us. So, going further, if we see the qualities we really have, if we see the qualities we don't have, we can ask, well, why is it that we have certain qualities and don't have others? And we can see it depends on conditions, internal conditions of our lives, external conditions of our lives. We are such and such a person because we've lived in such and such conditions. So it's a much more complex understanding than simply we're good or we're bad. Samsara, of course, is conditioned existence. Buddhism teaches all objects and phenomena arise in dependence on conditions and cease when those conditions cease. The great Buddhist teaching of conditioned co-production, the great universal truth of conditioned co-production. So our middle way between praise and blame is reality, taking our stand in reality and truth of conditionality. Getting security and confidence from reality rather than the opinions of others. By seeing we have been conditioned, formed by the condition of our lives, the conditions of our lives. Well, when we really see it, when we really penetrate it, paradoxically, maybe we become free. We free ourselves from those conditions. So the middle way between praise and blame is reality. And a question for you. What conditions specific to your life have most influenced you, your character, the qualities you have? An interesting question to reflect about, and I'd be very happy to read about it in chat. And finally, the middle way between pleasure and pain. What is it? How do we stop chasing pleasures? How do we stop frantically trying to avoid anything painful? or the middle way, this mindfulness in the moment. It's direct experience, unmediated by thoughts and emotions. Direct experience, unmediated by thoughts like, positively, this is bliss. This makes life worth living. Unmediated by negative thoughts like, this is hell. I don't want to keep living. Unmediated by emotions when feeling happy, life is wonderful, and feeling bad, and life is terrible. So the middle way between pleasure and pain, awareness in the moment, being present here and now. Let's hear a little more about it. So how does this work with pain? We could say that we don't suffer so much because of the pain itself. We suffer because of the idea of pain. We can torment ourselves with thoughts like, how long will this pain last? Will it ever heal? Will I get better? Is it serious? Will I die? Torment ourselves with all the terrible things happening in the body. The torn this, the fractured that. These graphic images of terrible disasters in our bodies, that occur in our minds, in our imagination. But if we leave the world of ideas and rest in a current moment, direct experience of the current moment, we can ask ourselves, what exactly are we experiencing? How does the pain actually feel? Maybe it's a feeling of pressure. Maybe heat or energy. Maybe rather intense heat or energy. Maybe it isn't really all that bad. Maybe it's something discordant, a discordant energy. The feeling equivalent of listening to an out-of-tune guitar. Maybe there's a sense of vulnerability. Maybe we'll see that what we're actually feeling is something that's constantly changing. And question for you, how do you feel your pain? Or some of the pains that you have in your body? How would you describe them? Is there anything in the descriptions that I've listed that you think is missing? Please add them. I have a Buddhist woman friend who had a terrible car accident as a young woman. She spent many nights in hospital, not able to sleep because of the pain. She felt, I just can't go on. But realized, deep in the middle of the night, that she didn't need to get through the night. She just needed to get through the moment, meaning she just had to be in the moment. And this felt like a great relief. The ideas about her experience dropped away, and she was left with her direct experience. It was still unpleasant, but bearable. Out of her life experience, she started a business, helping people with pain by the practice of mindfulness. The company's called Breathworks. Now it's a highly successful worldwide company. So we alleviate pain by staying in the moment, by being here and now, present in the moment. Or at least we relieve the suffering connected with pain. But how does the middle way work with pleasure? When we experience pleasure, we often want it to last, or at least an underlying attitude that we want it to last. Buddhism calls this wanting the pleasure to last as craving. And craving is inherently unpleasant. So there's an unpleasant tinge to our experience of pleasure. Maybe we fear losing the pleasure. Maybe we think it'll be so long before we can feel it again. Or maybe we only experience the thought that this is pleasant, rather than the experience itself to any great degree. We like the thought this is pleasant because we can express it and be good, positive boys and girls when we don't maybe really feel like it all that much. Maybe we want the pleasure to be more intense. We want the pleasure to be more pleasurable. These are all forms of craving. But it's worth remembering that pleasure without craving is more pleasurable than pleasure with. Maybe a little refined hedonism can help us in this regard. And how can we reduce the craving? We can reduce the craving by letting the pleasures pass, letting them end. And this isn't easy. They're strong volitions for the pleasures to continue. But we can work on this by letting the pleasures pass, by staying in the moment, being open to our experience, our new experience arising at every moment. And we can reduce craving by moving away from our ideas about pleasure to our direct experience. What is it that we really enjoy? And we can challenge the belief that pleasure is the most important thing. Our ordinary everyday pleasures, the most important thing in life. Our little luxuries are the most important thing in life. to reduce our craving for pleasure. Remembering, of course, that pleasure without craving is more pleasurable than ordinary pleasure itself. A question for you. What's your relationship to pleasure? Do you have enough of it? Or do you have too much? So we can see a certain similarity in our replies. What to do with pain? Stay in the moment. What to do with pleasure? Stay in the moment. What's the middle way between pleasure and pain? Staying in the moment, being aware in the moment, feeling the full richness of our experience in this very moment. So we've been looking at the four pairs of worldly winds and the middle way between them. Firstly, gain and loss. The middle way being simplicity of life, simplicity of lifestyle. Secondly, fame and infamy or obscurity, with the middle way being beauty and inner or spiritual beauty. Thirdly, praise and blame, the middle way being reality, truth, or more concretely seeing the conditions that gave rise to us as we are now. And fourthly, finally, pleasure and pain, the middle way being fully present in the moment. So using an awareness of these worldly winds as a way to change our attitude and approach to life, to change our strategies to life, to deal with the highs and lows of worldly existence. So as to go forth from the false refuges that the worldly winds embody, and to go for refuge to the true refuges, and practically steps that we can take to do this, to go forth more and more deeply, to go for refuge more and more deeply, to go forth from that which isn't reliable as a refuge, to go forth from that which isn't reliable, and to go for refuge to that which really is the true refuge. I wish you all the best in your endeavors and journey on the path to what is true, stable, and ultimately reliable.